Commander Jake Thompson's hands gripped the metal railing of the UES Liberty's bridge as red warning lights painted everything in crimson. The emergency transmission crackled through the ship's speakers, filled with static and desperation. A voice spoke in broken galactic standard, pleading for anyone who would listen. The message came from Captain Theron of the Villani Republic, his words shaking with fear. His people were dying. 12 of their worlds had already fallen to the Corvin Empire's unstoppable war machine. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were now nothing but ash and rubble. Millions of innocent beings were dead, and millions more would follow. Jake watched the holographic display show the Corvin fleet advancing like a plague across the star map. 300 massive warships, each one bristling with weapons that could crack a planet in half. They moved in perfect formation, destroying everything in their path. The Corvin Empire didn't just conquer worlds, they consumed them completely, leaving nothing behind but empty space. Lieutenant Riley Davis looked up from her communication station, her face pale. The young officer had joined the Earth fleet, hoping for adventure among the stars. Instead, she was watching an entire civilization face extinction. Commander, the Galactic Council just issued their official response. They're telling everyone to stay away. No species is willing to face the Corvin fleet. The bridge fell silent, except for the steady hum of the ship's engines. Every officer present understood what those numbers meant. The Villani Republic had 40 ships left from their once proud fleet. 40 aging vessels against 300 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre, waiting to happen. Jake studied the tactical readout again, his mind racing through possibilities. He thought about Earth's history, about all the times humans had faced impossible odds. The Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans held off thousands. The Siege of the Alamo, where a handful of defenders chose death over surrender. Stalingrad, where an entire city refused to break under the worst assault in human history. Captain Lisa Morgan's voice crackled over the communication system from her ship, the UES Vengeance. She had been Jake's friend since their academy days, and he could hear the concern in her voice. Jake, I'm reading the same numbers you are. 300 Corvin ships against our 50. High Command will never approve this mission. It's suicide. Other captains voiced similar concerns across the fleet channel. Captain Tom Wilson of the UES Ranger pointed out that Earth's fleet was designed for exploration and defense, not taking on the galaxy's most feared military force. Captain Amy Foster from the UES Phoenix reminded everyone that humans were still newcomers to galactic politics. This wasn't their fight. But Jake couldn't shake the image of those Villani cities burning. He thought about the children in the transmission, crying as their homes were destroyed. He remembered his own daughter back on Earth, safe and happy, because people had been willing to fight for what was right. Listen up, everyone, Jake said into his communicator, his voice carrying across all 50 human ships. I know the odds look bad. I know this seems impossible, but that's never stopped humans before. We didn't crawl out of caves and build starships by playing it safe. We didn't explore the galaxy by running from a fight. He paused, looking out at the stars through the bridge's main view screen. Somewhere out there, innocent people were dying, while the galaxy's great powers did nothing. The Galactic Council had ships and weapons, but they lacked something humans had in abundance: the willingness to stand up for others, even when it meant risking everything. Signal Earth Command, Jake ordered, his decision made. Tell them we're going in. The brilliant flash of the human fleet dropping out of hyperspace lit up the darkness of space like 50 shooting stars, appearing at once. But their arrival came at the worst possible moment. Just ahead of them, the last Villani orbital defense station erupted in a massive fireball. Its twisted metal remained spinning away into the void. The once beautiful blue world of Villani Prime hung below them, its surface scarred by orbital bombardment. Admiral Korak stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the destroyer of worlds, watching the human ships appear on his tactical display. The massive Corvan leader was over 8 feet tall, covered in dark scales that had been hardened in 100 battles. His yellow eyes gleamed with cruel amusement as he studied the new arrivals. The Corvan fleet stretched across space in perfect formation, their black warships gleaming like deadly jewels. Each vessel was 3 times larger than the biggest human ship, armed with plasma cannons that could melt through solid steel like butter. They had conquered every opponent through sheer overwhelming force, crushing resistance before it could even begin. 50 ships, Corax's tactical officer reported, his voice filled with disbelief. That's all Earth sent. Are they insane? Corax threw back his massive head and laughed, the sound echoing through his bridge. His crew joined in, their harsh voices mixing together in cruel mockery. These humans were clearly desperate fools, thinking their tiny fleet could make any difference against the might of the Corvan Empire. But down on the surface of Vellani Prime, the survivors watching through damaged telescopes felt something they hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. The humans had come, against all odds, against all common sense. Earth had answered their desperate call for help. Commander Jake Thompson stood calmly on his bridge as chaos erupted around him. His tactical officer was shouting warnings about the overwhelming enemy numbers. His weapons officer was reporting that their guns were completely outclassed. His communications officer was receiving frantic messages from other human captains asking for orders. Instead of charging forward like every other species would have done, Jake gave an order that surprised everyone. All ships, scatter formation. Use the debris field for cover. Find whatever salvage you can, and make it work. The 50 human ships suddenly broke apart like a school of fish avoiding a predator. They dove behind twisted chunks of destroyed Vellani vessels, using asteroid fields and space junk as shields. To the watching Corvan fleet, it looked like the humans were running away in panic. Captain Tom Wilson aboard the UES Ranger was already getting creative. His engineering teams were cutting apart pieces of destroyed Vellani ships, looking for anything useful. "Bobby, can we make those power cores work with our systems?" he called to his chief engineer. Meanwhile, Captain Lisa Morgan was directing her crew to salvage weapons from the wreckage. "I don't care if it's not designed for our ships. Make it fit. Weld it on if you have to." The UES Vengeance was soon bristling with jury-rigged alien technology that no military manual had ever covered. The Corvan officers watched this strange behavior with growing confusion. "What kind of battle tactic is this?" demanded Corax's second-in-command. "They're acting like scavengers, not warriors." But the Vellani survivors understood something the Corvans didn't. These humans weren't retreating, they were adapting. Every piece of salvaged equipment, every creative modification, every unconventional hiding spot was part of something larger. The humans were turning the battlefield itself into their weapon. Jake Thompson studied his tactical display, watching his ships spread across the debris field like pieces on a chessboard. Each captain was working independently, but they all understood the plan. This wasn't going to be a traditional space battle, with neat formations and predictable outcomes. This was going to be something the galaxy had never seen before: human warfare at its finest. The silence of space was shattered when Captain Lisa Morgan's ship, the UES Vengeance, suddenly burst from behind the twisted wreckage of a destroyed Vellani space station. The Corvan ships had been slowly advancing, expecting the humans to either surrender or make some desperate last charge. Instead, they got something completely unexpected. Lisa's weapons officer, Lieutenant Danny Park, pressed the firing button with a wild grin on his face. What launched from their ship wasn't the sleek energy beams that every other species used in space combat. Instead, crude mining explosives, the kind used to blast apart asteroids for valuable minerals, streaked through space toward the nearest Corvan cruiser. The Corvan captain of that ship barely had time to laugh at the primitive human weapons before they struck his shields. The mining charges weren't designed for elegant space warfare. They were built to crack open the hardest rocks in the galaxy. When they hit the Corvin energy barriers, they tore through them like a sledgehammer through glass. Admiral Corax watched from his command ship as one of his cruisers suddenly went dark, its shields completely gone and its whole bleeding atmosphere into space. "What kind of weapons are those?" he roared at his tactical officer. "Those aren't military grade." "Sir, they appear to be industrial mining equipment," the confused officer replied, checking his readings twice. "Somehow they've modified them for ship-to-ship combat." Before Corax could process this information, another human ship struck from a completely different direction. Lieutenant Tom Rodriguez, aboard the UES Phoenix, had been working for hours with a team of engineers, stripping parts from broken Volani equipment and combining them with human technology that was never meant to work together. The result was something that looked more like a science experiment than a weapon. When Tom activated his improvised electromagnetic pulse device, it sent out waves of energy that scrambled every electronic system within miles. Two massive Corvin warships suddenly went completely dead, their crews sitting helplessly in the dark as their weapons powered down and their engines died. "On Earth, we call this making do," Tom said to his amazed crew as they watched the enemy ships drift helplessly through space. The human fleet moved through the battle zone like a pack of hunting wolves, never where the Corvins expected them to be. Captain Mike Wilson's ship would appear from behind an asteroid, fire a volley of jury-rigged weapons, then disappear before the enemy could respond. Captain Amy Foster was using her ship's mining lasers, tools meant for cutting through rock, to slice Corvin fighters in half. Commander Jake Thompson coordinated the chaos from his position on the UES Liberty, but he wasn't giving traditional military orders. Instead, he was encouraging his captains to think creatively, to use whatever they could find, to turn the battlefield itself into their advantage. "Bobby, can you make that Volani power core work with our torpedo launcher?" he heard Captain Wilson asking his engineer over the communication channel. "Lisa, try bouncing your mining charges off that asteroid field. The ricochet might catch them off guard." Jake suggested to Captain Morgan. The Corvin fleet, built around overwhelming firepower and disciplined formations, had no idea how to fight an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Every time they adapted to one human tactic, the humans would try something completely different. When Captain Amy Foster's ship, the UES Titan, took a direct hit from a Corvin plasma cannon, her crew expected her to retreat for repairs. Instead, Amy made a decision that shocked everyone watching. With her ship's engines damaged and her weapons offline, she aimed her crippled vessel directly at the engine core of the massive Corvon dreadnought that had wounded her. "All hands, abandon ship," Amy ordered as her vessel picked up speed, heading straight for the enemy's most vulnerable point. Down on Volani Prime, the surviving defense commander watched the battle through his damaged sensors, hardly believing what he was seeing. "These humans fight like wild berserkers," he whispered to his aide. "But they do it with the precision of master tacticians. How is that possible?" The answer was simple, though the galaxy had never seen it before. Humans didn't just adapt to survive. They thrived on turning disadvantages into strengths, making weapons out of tools, and finding victory where others saw only defeat. The moment of terrible realization hit Admiral Corax like a physical blow to his massive chest. For the past 2 hours, he had been watching the human ships dart around the battlefield like confused insects, seemingly running random attack patterns that made no tactical sense. His officers had been laughing at the primitive human strategy, calling them cowards and amateurs. Now, staring at his tactical display, Corax saw the truth. Every seemingly random movement had been planned. Every retreat that looked like panic had been calculated. The humans hadn't been running away, they had been moving into position, like chess pieces on a board that stretched across millions of miles of space. "Sir, we have a problem," his tactical officer announced, his voice cracking. with fear. The young Corvin's scales had turned pale as he studied the sensor readings. We're completely surrounded. They've blocked every hyperspace jump point. Every escape route is cut off. Corax felt his blood run cold as he looked at the display. His 300 ships, arranged in the traditional Corvin battle formation, were now trapped in the center of a carefully constructed cage. 50 human vessels had somehow positioned themselves at exactly the right points to turn his superior numbers into a disadvantage. Captain Mike Wilson aboard the UES Ranger checked his position one final time before speaking into his communicator. All units, this is Wilson. The net is closed. Time to show these lizards how Earth's apex predators hunt. His crew could hear the satisfaction in his voice as he watched the Corvin fleet realize their situation. The beauty of the human strategy was its simplicity. On Earth, wolves had perfected this technique over millions of years of evolution. They would scatter when facing a larger opponent, seeming to retreat in disorder. But every movement served a purpose: to surround, to confuse, to trap. The prey would think it was winning right up until the moment the circle closed. Jake Thompson had spent years studying not just military tactics, but the hunting patterns of Earth's most successful predators. He understood that sometimes the best way to defeat a larger force was to make them think they were winning while you maneuvered them exactly where you wanted them. All ships, execute pattern Alpha. Jake's voice rang out across the human fleet. Hit them from all sides simultaneously. No mercy, no quarter. What happened next was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen in space combat. The human ships attacked from 6 different directions at exactly the same moment, their timing perfect, despite having no central computer controlling them. Each captain knew their role and executed it flawlessly. Captain Lisa Morgan's ship struck from above, her mining charges smashing into the Corvin flagship's upper shields. Captain Tom Rodriguez attacked from below, his improvised EMP weapons scrambling the electronics of an entire squadron. Captain Amy Foster, now commanding a backup vessel after her heroic sacrifice earlier, hit the enemy formation from the side with salvaged Villani plasma cannons. The Corvin fleet, designed to fight enemies who attacked in straight lines and predictable formations, had no defense against this coordinated chaos. Their massive ships were too slow to turn and face multiple threats at once. Their weapons, powerful enough to destroy planets, couldn't track targets that moved like angry hornets around a disturbed nest. Admiral Corax watched in horror as his carefully organized battle line fell apart. Ships crashed into each other, trying to avoid human attacks coming from unexpected angles. His communications network was jammed by human electronic warfare. His formation, which had conquered dozens of worlds, became a liability as his own vessels blocked each other's weapons. Target their command ship, Jake ordered, his voice calm, despite the chaos surrounding him. Cut off the head, and the body dies. The Corvin admiral found himself facing something that defied everything he knew about warfare. These humans didn't fight like civilized beings with rules and formations. They fought like wild animals, but wild animals with starships, advanced technology, and the tactical intelligence of a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. As human ships closed in from all directions, Admiral Corax finally understood the truth. His empire had made a terrible mistake. They hadn't encountered just another species to conquer. They had awakened something far more dangerous: humanity's instinct for survival, refined into the deadliest fighting force the galaxy had ever seen. The great Corvin fleet that had terrorized the galaxy for decades ended its reign not in a blaze of glory, but with a simple communication sent across all frequencies. Admiral Corax's voice, once filled with arrogant confidence, now carried the weight of complete defeat as he transmitted his unconditional surrender to Commander Jake Thompson. The battlefield that had once been filled with the thunder of plasma cannons and the screams of dying ships now fell eerily quiet. Floating through space were the remains of over 150 Corvan warships, their hulls cracked open like broken eggs. But the truly remarkable sight was the other half of the enemy fleet, nearly 150 massive vessels that had been captured completely intact by human boarding parties. Sergeant Dan Miller wiped the sweat from his forehead as he secured the bridge of a Corvan dreadnought. His team of Marines had fought their way through the ship's corridors, using their superior tactics and teamwork to overcome enemies twice their size. "Another one secured, sir," he reported to his captain. The crew surrendered when they realized we weren't going to kill them. Staff Sergeant Kelly Brown was having similar success on another captured vessel. Her boarding team had managed to take control of the ship's engineering section without firing a single shot. The Corvan crew, demoralized and confused by their fleet's sudden collapse, offered no resistance when faced with determined human soldiers who seemed to appear from nowhere. On the bridge of his captured flagship, Admiral Corax stood in chains, his massive frame somehow seeming smaller than before. The proud warrior who had conquered 12 worlds now looked like a broken old lizard, his scales dull and his eyes filled with confusion. When Commander Jake Thompson entered the command center, Corax could barely bring himself to look at the human leader. "How is this possible?" Corax demanded, his voice a mixture of anger and bewilderment. "My fleet outnumbered yours 6-1. We had superior weapons, larger ships, more experience. How did you defeat us so completely?" Jake walked over to the tactical display that still showed the final moments of the battle. Human ships were already swarming over the captured Corvan vessels, their crews working to understand and adapt the alien technology. "The answer is simple," Jake said calmly. "You fought like conquerors who expected easy victory. We fought like survivors who had no choice but to win." The difference was fundamental, Jake explained. The Corvan Empire had grown soft from centuries of easy victories against species that fought like them, with rigid formations, predictable tactics, and an unwillingness to take desperate risks. But humans had spent their entire history fighting for survival against impossible odds. They had learned that sometimes the only way to win was to break every rule, use every advantage, and never give up no matter how bad things looked. Down on the surface of Valani Prime, the survivors emerged from their shelters to witness something they had thought impossible. The Corvan fleet was gone, replaced by human vessels that flew, the flags of both Earth and the Valani Republic. Captain Lisa Morgan, still wearing pieces of salvaged Corvan armor welded onto her human uniform, stood beside the Valani defense commander as they watched the cleanup operations. "Your people saved our entire civilization," the alien leader said, his voice filled with emotion. "The Valani Republic offers Earth our eternal alliance. We will stand with humanity, wherever the stars may take us." Similar messages began flooding in from across the galaxy as news of the impossible victory spread through the interstellar communication networks. Species that had dismissed humans as primitive backwater colonists suddenly found themselves reconsidering everything they thought they knew about the newcomers from the small blue world. The Alterian Confederation, which had refused to even acknowledge Earth's existence, sent diplomatic envoys offering trade agreements. The powerful Zentari Empire, masters of galactic politics, invited human representatives to join their councils. Even the mysterious ancients, who had remained silent for thousands of years, transmitted a simple message: "Well done." But perhaps the most important message came from Admiral Corax himself, transmitted across all galactic frequencies as he was taken into human custody. His final words would be remembered by every species in known space. "Do not underestimate them. They are not like us. They do not fight for glory or conquest. They fight for survival, for their friends, for strangers they have never met. They are something far more dangerous than any empire or fleet. They are human."